Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Step into the Pivot. Today we have our wonderful, beautiful friend, Leah Bliss. So, Leah, welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you, ladies. I am so excited to be here. We were just saying, it's a conversation amongst friends.
It is, it is. And it's really funny. You're one of those people that even and I just met last year at the same event. And I think we like all instantly became friends. And I love relationships like that. It's somebody I can meet up with. I think I saw you again in January and I was like, Leah, I didn't know, and it makes it so nice to do that. And the event we were at, like, you didn't know a lot of people there, so it gave me the opportunity also to introduce you to people I knew and all that. So Leah is really, she is all about the digital engagement, right? She's going to talk to us not really about some of this, but sort of about some of this. She really focuses on LinkedIn. She has some amazing tips and tricks if you ever get to see her. That's not what this podcast is really about. We're going to talk more about, your life and that pivot that you've had or those pivots you've had. So I'm excited for our conversation today.
Excellent. Me too. Yes, we're not, I normally would just spiel about how to get 1,000 impressions on your LinkedIn post, but we're not talking about that today.
No, we'll get those 1,000 impressions when we post the episode.
Yes. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, that was the conversation that we bonded over. So at the conference where we met you, you were teaching us. So that was our first experience of you was really you were in teaching mode, you were presenting, you were speaking, you were really living your purpose. And you have a fabulous new website that really showcases all that. And I remember the silence and the note taking during your session. So this was one of those keynote experiences where people were like, not able to keep up with their own note taking.
Mhm.
There were so many gifts. You were basically one sentence after another proving value and bringing value and raising value and just gifting and gifting and gifting, amazingly useful and applicable information.
Thank
Love
you.
that. And I also could feel one of the reasons this person is really good at this is because they have a real depth of experience underneath all the gems. You can't just be like dishing out the gems that fast if you haven't really like earned them and found them and, spent some time treasure hunting. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your treasure hunts through
Through
life?
life,
Yes.
I, I think I could probably do 6 different episodes about 6 different pivots. I have a girlfriend who says, Leah, if you put every single job title you've ever had on a business card, you wouldn't be able to read it because the print would be too small. So I've done literally everything, but this kind of, I don't know this version of me. Like, I've always been a late bloomer. I was pretty sheltered growing up. I was always very kind of emotionally immature for my age. I was the oldest. And so, like, I just had a lot of younger siblings, and I didn't grow up very quickly. And so I felt like turning 30 was the like, oh, here we made it. You did it. So everybody in their 20s that's like, I need to figure my life out. I'm like, girl, sit down. You got time. Because in, let's see, so 20, like 16, 17, 18, 19, in my late 20s, I was working. I remember I like had this vision. I wanted to be living my best, like, Devil Wears Prada life. I wanted to work in high-end retail. I wanted to wear like my little all black outfit, bring my coffee to work every day with my handbag, and then help women pick out gorgeous pieces and just like live in the world of fashion, which I very much enjoyed for a really long time. I was and still am a single mom working 2 jobs. So I was doing fashion and retailing during the day. I worked as a personal shopper. And then I was moonlighting as a bartender at night and on the weekends. So I remember like I would work 20-hour shifts between the 2 jobs for 3 straight days. I had endurance. I was getting my steps in. And I was so miserable. I hated every minute of it. I it wasn't fulfilling. I didn't see a future. It was just kind of a, I don't want to call it a hot girl job. It was a hot girl job, but it wasn't a career choice by any means. So my father's a career CMO, and he was like, you should get a job in sales. I think you'd be really good in sales. And I felt so immensely gatekept from the corporate world. I didn't know anything about it. He's like, just go get a sales job. I think back to that advice. I'm like, yeah, I should have. I should have just become a BDR for some tech startup, but I didn't even know what any of those words meant. So I decided, I actually interviewed to do B2B sales for a retailer. I had an interview with this woman and she completely ghosted me, totally blew me off after the interview. And I was like, all right, something's got to change. So in October of 2019, I hired a business coach. And I think this was the biggest pivot because I didn't have any money and I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't really have a lot of support. So I sent an email to literally every single person I had ever met and was like, please, can you give me money so that I can hire this business coach? This is my plan. This is my idea. This is what I want to do. In many previous lives, I went to hair school and I have one client, a little old lady who I love, who I still do her hair to this day. 12 years later, I do her hair every 5 weeks. And she was like, here's all the money you need. Pay me back when you can. A completely random connection. She's like, I believe in you. Here you go. So I hired this business coach October, November, December, January into 2020. And she talked to me about how you do a sales call and how you prospect and kind of taught me the basics. And then COVID, malls closed, bars closed, nowhere to go. So now I'm at home with all the time in the world. And I was like, well, this is what I wanted. I guess I manifested it. So I started making YouTube videos about like work from home strategy and kind of how to structure your life, what time blocking was, and just trying to give people something during COVID. And about 6 weeks into that, I did it every day. I was so dedicated. I had a routine. Every day I put out a YouTube video and they were awful. Nobody looked them up. They were so bad. I got a call from someone. They were like, hey, you have an on-screen presence that can't be taught that we're looking for. Everything else we can teach you. We want to hire you. The part that I hesitate to share is that it was my father, but he didn't hire me because I was his kid. He had started a company doing LinkedIn training for companies because he had spent years mastering digital presence as a career CMO. And so during COVID, a lot of these large corporate tech companies had just buckets of money and nowhere to put it because they couldn't have events, they couldn't do travel, and they were freaking out because how do we do sales if we can't meet people in person? And so they said, Richard, we need you to teach us how to use LinkedIn. And he was doing 4 to 12 90-minute trainings per week. And he looked to his wife, my stepmom, and was like, I wish I could clone myself. I just can't do this. And she was like, you did that already. Your oldest daughter, you should call her. There's 5 of us. So, and I was the only one with the job offer. So that's why I think I'm special. But he calls me up and he's like, I trust you with the on-screen presence that's in alignment with my brand. I can teach you the algorithm. I can teach you the sales training. I can teach you everything. And for a year, I was doing 4 to 12 90-minute sales trainings per week. And after every single one of those calls, I was getting very intense, very personalized on camera training feedback. You said, right, here's your text, here's your ums, here's where you did this wrong, you should have said this differently, while also having to comb through hundreds of pages of raw algorithmic data, which is not fun. It's very boring, but you learn to love it. And I love this idea that like passion comes second because I had no passion for the LinkedIn algorithm. And now it's my favorite thing in the world. I love it. So started doing that, did that for 3 or 4 years. And I'm lucky that my father's also just a great mentor. He said, your job should teach you how to get your next job. So as I'm learning and being trained, he helped me publish a book. It has nothing to do with LinkedIn. It's called Everything Is Your Fault. It was, I did it. It's over. We don't talk about it anymore. But he said, you got to learn some more skills. So I went and got a part-time job working for another company that trained professional keynote speakers on how to manage their business systems through a CRM platform. So I got trained on the platform, and then I was training these business owners, small business owners, how to manage their businesses. So I was like, okay, cool. I did both jobs for 6 months. And then on the same day, I got a call from both people, from my CRM company boss and my dad. And they both said the same thing. We've decided to right size the business. We no longer see this progressing as we thought it would. You've done an excellent job, and we truly value your support and dedication to the role, but you're laid off. So I cried hysterically, and my boyfriend at the time like took me to the bar, and we got a little drunk, and that you spend one day in it. And then I was like, well, I guess I own my own business now, because now I have all the skills to run the business and I have a product to sell. I still partner with my dad sometimes, and we do joint events and things, and it's really, really fun. But that was January last year. So I've been doing this for just over a year now. And as I was saying, as I got on this call, like, man, I get to talk to the coolest people. I get to go to the coolest events. I just love my job. And so to just write several steps, several actions to be taken to take that full pivot into a career versus just some jobs.
You're so cool. Let me just
Yeah.
say one thing so I don't lose it, because this was so awesome. I wrote it down. What a novel way to consider that idea that, motivation, let's not sit around and wait for it. You basically get started and then the motivation kicks in. If I'm thinking
Yes.
about like a simple example of physical fitness,
Mhm.
maybe in the beginning when we make that resolution, it's easier to get out the door and start exercising. But after a little while, there's going to be a point in time where you're like, oh my God, I really don't feel like it. You don't sit
Yes.
around and wait for the motivation to do it to kick in. You actually get yourself ready. And then, 12 minutes in, you're like, okay,
Uh-huh.
this was a really good idea. And, listening to you kind of like have that wisdom that there is something like that going on here in all of these examples that you brought to us. Thank you for that. Okay, Teresa, take over. I was just really wanted to not lose this because I
No,
loved it.
no, it's totally true. And I was thinking something very similar, right? That, sometimes we have to try things, sometimes they'll fail, sometimes we get laid off, sometimes COVID hits, sometimes all those things, right? But we have to make the most of them. And I think ultimately, I think the thing that really hit me is like that pointed you in that direction of where you're at today, right? You had to have all those experiences and all those other things to get here, right? Because you couldn't have started here like or said, oh, this is what I want to do. Right? I mean, that doesn't work that way. And I think sometimes we don't think about that, right? We just think we can come out of college or off this, starter job or something and be where we want to be, but it really is a process. It's something you have to work towards. It's even talk about, would you talk a little about how that's a personal growth thing for you, a mental and emotional journey for you, right? Because there's more to it than just a job or this business or whatever. There's personal things going
Yeah.
on there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, part of the motivation, right, being a single mom is a huge part of it, where it's like I literally have no option to fail. And so you have to take action. And it comes to, because I feel like I'm the kind of person that really struggles with plodding along, if you will. And so I have to create systems, right? And like Evie said, you can't just wait to be motivated. And so a big part of it is grace, is the ability to just be like, listen, you didn't. I was actually talking with a friend about this the other day where I'm like, oh, I feel like I didn't do anything today. And it's like, ooh, nope. I feel like I didn't do anything that generated revenue today. But did I volunteer at my son's school? Yes. Did I go and do self-care? Yes. I did a lot of things, but it's and I still am in this constantly reframing that productivity is not equal to money. And so it's like, where do we, right? So there's so much in it. There's so much constantly, I'm constantly learning and evolving.
Well, you said two things that I really picked up on. One is that you have to give yourself some grace. And I say that a lot because sometimes we have to do that. And, I talk with a lot of people, women who are like, like you said, like, I didn't do anything to generate revenue today. But I always say, if you're doing something you love and that shows through, that will be a byproduct from it. The money piece will be a byproduct because that comes through in your personality. Like, I think that's what Evie and I saw in you the first time we saw you present, right? We saw that you really did enjoy this. It wasn't even just about giving us tips and tricks on LinkedIn. It was that you really had a passion for this. And I love that because people say that about me, like when I'm up there talking about something I really love, and you can see it come through. And we saw that come through with you. Evie, I know you want to say something
Yeah.
because I think
Well,
you're feeling
I'm
the same.
listening. Yeah, and I'm actually really enjoying. I'm just enjoying listening to you and thinking about how we both relate because, how we measure things is also it's also up for discussion because, there's certain things where you can easily find the correlation between like I did this sales call and then that prospect said yes, so then they turned into a client, so then now there's an invoice I'm sending and they're paying it. But there's also this thing where I am on empty. So I am now going to go get that, quick massage, and then I'm going to get a little extra sleep. And then I'm going to volunteer at my kiddo's school. And then I'm going to feel so rejuvenated. And then I'm going to show up for the same sales call, right? And I am going to be so comfortable with my messaging that this person is going to have an easier time saying yes. So, like, then is that massage a revenue generating experience,
Activity,
you know,
arguably, yes.
Yeah.
right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
The
and I
other
was
thing,
going to
yeah,
ask, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You finish your thought. And then I was going to
I
ask
was
one
just
more
going
thing.
to remind us of another really cool thing is then one thing you're doing here with this example, you're making it easier for yourself to show up at work in full
Mhm.
presence. An example of a system working really well is when you spoke to us at that event, you made it so easy for people to follow up with you. It was playful, it was fun. You were like, QR code here, click on this, and then you get 20 minutes with me, 30 minutes with me, no problem. And so, like, it doesn't even feel like there's a sales thing going on,
Oh yeah.
really, right? But it doesn't feel hooky, it doesn't feel pulley. It's
Mhm.
fun. And all of your systems worked. I was sitting there. You didn't even finish presenting. I was already on your calendar because you have a really good system in place. And I was like, I want that. That's really,
Yeah.
that's really wonderful, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think your point goes into what I was going to ask, Leah, is, you do that. And I even took advantage of it. I use LinkedIn all the time, but I was like, okay, well, I want you to look at my profile and tell me what. And, that's going to ultimately result in business for you because I'm going to refer you to somebody or others are. But could you talk maybe for a second? And this is not something I asked you about before, but you know, I think one of the hardest things we do also is sometimes set our price. Like, how do you know,
Mhm.
right? How to, and I think this is something everybody struggles with. What's my worth, right? How do I do that? I do some of these things. Can you just say in a big picture? Because I think you and I have talked about this, and it's hard to do that sometimes, right? And Evie, I know you and I have talked about it, right? What do we charge for this? How do we figure out what we're worth? And we're worth a lot and our time's worth a lot, but it's definitely something I think sometimes we struggle with.
I think one of the biggest things is separating the idea of my worth and the worth of my services, because my worth will never change. Ever, 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 ever. And it is, you can't put a number on it. But the price that you should pay me for the services that I deliver, that's a completely different conversation. And I work with a lot of budding entrepreneurs, women in the same place where they're like, oh, I think I'm about to quit my job for my side hustle. And it's always, how do I know how to price this appropriately? Even my photographer asked me, she was like, I'm going to do a keynote. How do I price it? I'm like, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really comes down to knowing the quality and the value. If you know the result that you bring, you can base your value around that. There are a bunch of different like algorithms, and you can even make it like a mathematical decision. You can say, how much is my time worth per hour divided by how much I'm going to do, what I'm going to show up is. I charge anywhere between $2,500 and $10,000 for a keynote. And that's a pretty big spread. But one of the biggest things I think about as an entrepreneur when it comes to how to price my services is opportunity. Because if I'm speaking or if I'm interacting with someone, right? Like Evie said, I give away 30-minute consulting sessions like candy. Just here, like, oh, I'm Oprah. You get 30 minutes and you get a profile audit. But the return on that investment is really high because very often they're like, well, how do I work with you? Well, how can I refer you? Well, and so that spin is there. So when I think about pricing my services, I always think about what is the percentage of likelihood that because I do this work, it will provide me an opportunity to do more work. So when I speak at conferences where it's multiple companies, multiple professionals, I tend to price a little bit lower because there's a higher percentage of opportunity. But when a company brings me in to just train or speak with their sales team, it's like, well, they're not going to hire, none of these people can hire me. So the pricing is a little bit higher because of the lack of opportunity. So that's I guess the strategy
Yeah.
behind it, but the mindset behind it very much is like my value never changes.
Oh, that's
I
so cool. Yeah. And then you can be flexible, right? And then you can have these inner pivots like, this is my standard operating procedure right now. May not be a year from now if things change in my environment, in the external environment. So like there's this, I think people sometimes what I notice have a hard time committing to a certain approach and then being, like you were saying, consistent with an approach. Um, because I don't know, maybe good reasons for that. And I think some of it has to do with that awareness of the inherent worth that
Mhm.
they bring to the situation. And then at the same time, like inability to flex and be like, oh, this is what we were doing last year, but now it's, different
Yeah.
circumstances. I'm adjusting my standard operating procedures.
Yes. And it's so funny. My father was the one who had the hardest time with this. His resume is impressive at least, but he would be like, well, I don't know what to charge. It's maybe we'll just do it for like $1,000. And I remember my sister just yelled at him one day. She was like, you should be charging $10,000. What are you doing? What are you doing? And so over the course of 5 years, he's raised his prices by 10x because it was but he had to learn to be emotionally comfortable with saying my services are worth $10,000. And that's really hard for people.
Yeah, I love that you talk about it being emotionally comfortable, though. You have to be comfortable with that. It's such an important piece. But again, we're back to worth, we're back to all those other things. So I think it's a very valid conversation, especially to any of our listeners who are thinking about doing their own thing or doing their own thing and maybe, don't know how to charge more or whatever that
Yeah.
looks like. So tell us about an aha kind of revelation you've had as a result of kind of changing? I'm sure you've had a lot.
100
We
of
all
them.
have.
100 of them. I think one of the biggest ones, and I definitely did not put this in the notes as we prepped for this call, but I think one of the biggest ones is releasing the attachment to safety, where, oh, if I work for my dad, my job security is there. Like, no, it's not. If
I was gonna say
I
it wasn't because I think he laid you off.
He fired me. Um, right, security. If I go work for a company, I'll have some more financial security. Nope, that didn't happen. And then in every aspect of my life, oh, if I am in a romantic relationship, I'll have security. Now that's not true. I've been married and divorced and engaged and broken it off and the whole gambit. Everything you could possibly be, I've been it. But there's no such thing as security, and the only thing you can count on is yourself. And especially when you realize that financially, that there is no such thing as financial security externally, but that all financial security exists in yourself. That I learned when I got my first bartending job and I was doing that, I was like, oh, I keep all my tips. So I control how much money I make purely by effort. And then once I got good at the finesse, I was like, oh, I control my income based on how skilled I am. So not only do I need to work hard, but I need to upskill, and I need to just know that I can depend on me. I don't have to wait for somebody else to hopefully go through another funding round and make sure I can get paid. I can depend on me, and I can release attachment to needing external validation for security. Aha.
That is so cool. So what does then today like safety mean to you in with all of this? Like what is safety? So, and what I'm thinking about is there's an affirmation that we just put out there in a newsletter that says, I'm rooted in safety and stability. And it was really about exactly this, like it ain't external. It
Mm-mm.
ain't external.
No, it's really, and I think it ties back to the whole money thing too, where it's just knowing that you're safe to take a day off, knowing that you're safe to not be stressed about whether you should have sent that email today, or I should probably reach out to 5 new prospects, or and the anxiety and the safety comes around like I am absolutely in control of my entire reality. And that's maybe a little woo woo, but I'm a little woo woo. So I, I'm in control of everything. And so I'm also completely not in control of anything.
Yeah.
And so it's really playing that game between like, I can't control anything that happens around me, but I 100% control everything that happens within me.
Wow.
And building that like
Yeah.
give and take and balance. And so it's just like, okay, I got this. I've been reading that book by Mel Robbins, her new book, the Let Them Theory. And I've been
Yeah.
really been like, okay, yep, it's going to happen. People are going to do what they're going to do. People are going to say they don't want to pay me. I have one client, I'm still chasing down an invoice from January. And it's like, okay, I'm not
Yeah.
going to be in my big feelings about it. Let them.
So I don't want to assume that that is the answer to the question that we ask all our guests, and you have provided the answer, but we want to hear it in your voice, the conclusion, which is, these pivots that you talked about, and then you talked about, like all kinds of, movement where the stability that you access is, staying
Mhm.
with yourself and looking for the answers on the inside. How are all these pivots for you a step forward?
How are all a step forward? I don't know. I have this theory that you can't set a goal past 3 years because you have no idea what is even capable, right? We can only imagine as far as we can imagine. And so I will never set a goal past 3 years. So the next 3 years, I'm like, ooh, what if I could make $1 million? What would that be like? That's cool. 3 years ago, completely not a possibility. Couldn't think of it. It might be past 3 years, but I don't know. But at least it's in the realm of possibility now. But all I know is that the combination of forward motion and trust sprinkled in with grace, that's as long as I keep doing that, I actually cannot fail.
No, I think that's amazing. And I do love your point about 3 years. Like I never understood, like people would ask me, when I ran a business for a 5-year projection, I can't project 5 years. Like I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, much less that, right? Like
Yeah.
3 years, okay, I can get on board with a couple years and just trying to think through what's coming. But things change so much in the business world in general, in financial services, and in every business. I mean, there's technology, there's AI, like there's so many pieces of that puzzle that who knows what, 3 years, even 3 years looks like down the road. So yeah, I think you're 100% right there. So thank you so much for being here today, Miss Leah Bliss. Before we let you go, would you remind everybody what your new website is? Because I think you just launched it, and Evie and I just looked at it, and it looks amazing. So remind our listeners of that.
It is theblissmagic.com, just like it sounds.
Yeah,
Bliss
awesome.
Magic, there's all sorts of goodies. If you do want LinkedIn tips, there's like a free downloadable LinkedIn guide thing. So all sorts of assets.
Yeah, awesome.
This is so cool. I don't think we've ever had a guest answer the question, how is the pivot a step forward, with the phrase that starts with, I don't know. And I think you actually gave us a bonus gift right there, because the I don't know is you've talked actually a lot about that place of like, I got to be here in the present moment. If I'm comfortable with the I don't know what the future is going to bring. I don't know how, people are going to react to what I have to offer. I am right here, right now. And that is a really powerful place to be. And thank you for being with us right here, right now.
I love you guys.
Miss Bliss. It's so fun saying your last name.
Yes, it is. And I love that she uses it too in her Bliss Magic. Yes. And, I think that's an amazing piece of it. So you got to use every tool you have. And in her case, it's Bliss. So it's great. All right. Thank you so much for being here again, Miss Leah Bliss. We appreciate having you. Thank you to all our listeners for being with us today and another episode of Step Into the Pivot. And just remember, if you have a pivot, step into it.